All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Really glad to see everyone came out on this beautiful morning. And so today's conversation is one that is deeply important, not just to CICOA, but to the well-being of our communities, our workplaces, and our families. We are here to talk about family caregivers in the workforce. And while that may sound like a niche topic, we know it's everything but. Right now, more than 1 in 5 employees in our workplaces is providing some form of unpaid care to a loved one. These caregivers are coordinating appointments, they're managing medications, they're supporting emotional and physical needs, and they are doing all of this while trying to meet the expectations of their job. Many are exhausted, many are alone, and many are doing the very best they can in an environment that was not created to address someone in this type of reality. As leaders, colleagues, and community partners, we have a choice. We can treat this as a growing challenge to be managed, or we can recognize it as one of the most meaningful opportunities of our time. The opportunity to build workplaces that see the whole human, that support dignity and care, and that enable employees to stay engaged without sacrificing their well being or that of their family. Today, we're here to learn, to listen, and to imagine what is possible when we take this responsibility seriously. We are also here to celebrate progress and to introduce a new solution that we believe moves us forward in a significant way. Thank you for your leadership, your openness, and your commitment to care. And so now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our panel with Addison.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate it. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, perfect. Well, welcome everyone to the relaunch of the Envision lecture series. Glad to have you here. Today's conversation, Family Caregivers in the Workforce, shines a light on a reality that touches nearly every family and every organization. More than 1 in 6 American workers is also a caregiver. These are our coworkers, managers, and friends, balancing spreadsheets and doctor's appointments, staff meetings, and sleepless nights. We'll explore the intersection of work, care, and well-being with 3 people who see it every day from different perspectives. I'm going to start on the far end with Leah Bennett, a caregiver case manager with CICOA Aging and In-Home Services Solutions, Justin Clifford, CEO of Bereave, and Darren Day, Chief Operating Officer of Workforce Chaplains and Care Partners. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Let's begin. So we're going to first talk about the human face of caregiving. So Leah, we're going to start with you. Leah, you've lived both sides of caregiving, as a daughter supporting your mom, and now as someone walking alongside other caregivers through CICOA's CareAware program. How has your personal experience shaped the way you support caregivers today?
I would say my personal experience as a caregiver gives me a deeper understanding of what others in similar roles may be going through. While every caregiving journey is unique, there are shared emotions and challenges that many caregivers face. I understand the deep love one can have for a family member and how that can coexist with moments of emotional exhaustion. I felt the shift in relationships as roles change, and I know that fear often comes with the responsibility of caregiving. Caregiving isn't always a crisis, it ebbs and flows. Some days are overwhelming, while others offer moments of peace or even joy. Recognizing this rhythm is important. Working caregivers carry all of these emotions and responsibilities while also managing the demands of a career. My experience helps me not only empathize with their journey, but also appreciate how incredibly difficult it can be to balance both roles. Sometimes simply acknowledging that struggle can be really powerful. I may not be able to fix the stressors they face, but offering support and validation can make a meaningful difference. I also make it a point to celebrate the seemingly small wins. For overwhelmed caregivers, self care can look like taking a shower, eating a meal that's uninterrupted, or getting a full night's sleep. These moments matter, and recognizing their significance helps caregivers see that they're doing their very best in a challenging situation, and that deserves to be honored and celebrated.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that personal and professional connection. It's very powerful. Justin, I want to pivot to you. Your work through Bereave also begins with empathy, helping people through loss both at home and at work. So why do you think so many workplaces still struggle to respond to well when employees experience something as universal as grief, loss, or caregiver transitions?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I want to back up real quick to talk about empathy for a second. Bereave and the way companies choose to show up in moments of hardship. Empathy, empathy is an accelerant, right? A business strategy around people, around supporting people, understanding how that impacts a profit and loss statement is got to be the starting point. And you can choose to add empathy and compassion to that as an accelerant if you would like. It is important, no doubt. The compassion piece is important. But in the workplace, moments of hardship like caregiving, like loss, like grief, supporting them in the way that you would want to be supported can be part of that business strategy. And Addison, I went there. What was the actual question?
No, you're good. So many workplaces still struggle to respond well when employees experience something as universal as this.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
It's a human thing, right? Grief is hard to talk about. Death is hard to talk about. We struggle at home to talk to our parents, our loved ones about what happens when they're gone. I struggle to talk to my dad about it, right? My dad is the guy that says, why are we talking about this? Because I'm perfectly healthy. I'm like, well, you have a stent in your heart. So, maybe not, right? But that's the way he grew up, right? And it's a tough conversation to have. It's an emotional conversation to have. And logistically, it's tough to have. So I don't blame employers for kind of hitting the easy button and, hitting continue on their bereavement policy that probably is 3 to 5 days based on some relationship that there is some preconceived notion at the business, and the business thinks they are the ones that should define how important those relationships are to their employees. It's very much backwards. The state of the state is backwards. And again, I don't blame them because it's tough to talk about, and you have to actually kind of face your own mortality in those conversations. And so passing the buck and rubber stamping the keep it as it is seems to be the easy thing to do.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. That's great perspective. And Darren, I now want to talk to you. You and your chaplain teams are often called into those very moments, very messy, very emotional intersections of work and life. From your experience, what are the most common struggles caregivers bring into the workplace, and how do chaplains walk alongside them in those moments?
Thanks. And so, first of all, it will vary person to person based on life circumstances, previous traumas, all sorts of issues. But to think about those issues we see quite often that are common and correlate to some of what you were sharing is they're strained on time. That's just a very practical outworking of people who are caregiving and also working in the workplace. They oftentimes have strained relationships. So the people they love and care outside of that person they're caregiving for, they're strained at times through that experience. And then they can experience compassion fatigue. And so obviously that may take more of an impact in the workplace if they're in some sort of caregiving workplace, maybe in healthcare, other areas where that compassion they're giving out is now taxed. So now when I go to try to do that in my workplace, it could, though, be in their home where that compassion fatigue sets in. As far as how chaplains address that, so I would say the first one with strains on time, it's really difficult because some of the great solutions, which were already mentioned, taking time for yourself, creating healthy boundaries on your time, like common time management things that we would encourage somebody, any reason they were dealing with a stress on their time. In a caregiver situation, the strain on their time is for something that's a priority one. This is the health, well-being of a loved one. So it's the kind of thing you're going to do at the expense of your wellness naturally. And then it's complicated because the voices that are around them, a sibling, the person being cared for, just their own expectations can bring along a lot of things that then the chaplain does help them through being that person of peace, that listening ear, allowing them to, so one of the biggest things is allowing them to work through making those wise choices that are going to look out for their own wellness and fill their cup in a non-judgmental way, a slightly more objective way. So we try to create that space that they can make some of those wise choices to look after themselves in terms of time. In terms of strained relationships, a chaplain, a care partner, somebody in someone's life that's a caregiver that can be that third party, a bit objective. There are times where we actually are literally a moderator, mediator between siblings or people who are their relationship strained through this caregiving situation. And then in terms of like one area I think we deal with quite a bit in this space would be false guilt. So a term we would use as chaplains around really a internal morality issue. As people are caregiving, they have a lot of expectations that are brought on them. They bring on themselves about being enough for this person, doing enough, etc. And that strain can really weigh, become an increasing burden. So the chaplain's able to be a listening ear and allow them to work through some of that guilt they're feeling that we would define as false, and allow them to see that and maybe get some freedom and have a little more excitement about what they're doing, the goodness of what they're doing. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. Now I want to kind of transition to the hidden load of caregiving and its impact. Leah, just going back to the other side, many caregivers talk about the invisible weight of juggling everything, the mental load, the planning, the worry. From your work with families, what do you wish employers understood about the invisible side of caregiving?
Between my own experience and my work with families, I would say that this is one of the most taxing parts of being a caregiver, because you're always anticipating what's coming next. There could be a next crisis, there can be a next demand of your time. You just really can never tell what is going to happen next. So that can definitely be one of the most challenging parts, because it does take up so much of your time. My hope is that employers begin to recognize this invisible weight. Some days caregivers are simply doing the best they can and trying to manage everything that's on their plate. I would say that a little flexibility and empathy from employers can go a long way in supporting someone who's already carrying so much. Employers who respond with empathy and support during a caregiver's crisis builds a foundation of trust, loyalty, and increased motivation. When my direct supervisor met me with understanding, offering help, checking in, and allowing me the space I needed during a difficult caregiving period, it made a lasting impact for me. The kind of response didn't just help me feel seen, it actually deepened my connection to the team and inspired me to work even harder. Supportive leadership isn't just good for morale, it's an investment in employee engagement and retention. When caregivers feel valued, they're more likely to stay committed, contribute meaningfully, and bring their best to the workplace.
Wonderful. Thanks. Darren, I want to go back to you. That invisible weight often shows up in subtle ways: stress, exhaustion, isolation. So how do you see the spiritual or emotional support changing workplace culture for employees carrying that dual role of worker and caregiver?
So how that spiritual emotional care when a workplace and organization tries to engage in providing something for that, how it changes culture. I think that it makes a massive statement to that organization's desire to say that we do genuinely care for you as an individual. We love you, your family. And so I think in terms of culture, when an organization looks for creative ways to engage in helping, rather than, I guess the alternative is kind of baked in that question, which is we, as was mentioned, kind of take a pass on that's something that you're dealing with in your own life. That's kind of that mentality of that's your home self, this is your work self. So get that all tied up and be a productive worker. to not go that route, but to make an open space and provide resources for people just makes a huge statement. I guess I was trying to think of an analogy, and as a parent, so I got 3 at home, and yes, I take all the empathy and sympathy for that. And one of the things I say what I experienced that could relate would be that one of my children, as they were working through some emotional mental health issues, my wife and I felt quite qualified to a certain extent, and we're providing some care. But at some point, by the grace of God, we realized, like, you know what? I think our kid would be served well by us providing somebody else that they could talk to. They could hear some of the same wisdom we were providing, but from another voice. And they might be a little more objective, that third party. They might be somebody who could walk alongside, and it will begin encouraging our child to work through things in a healthy way, build some of those pieces in their life they're going to need later. And so we realized that, had that conversation. And when I think about it, I really think for our child that was going through that, it was a big moment where they realized, okay, mom and dad care enough to provide these resources. And they're putting their money, they understand that, their time and investment, they're in this with me. It's a huge, I think, statement for them. We want their well-being in this way. For an employer to be thinking and providing things for people in this emotional, spiritual space, grief space, I think it's a huge statement, because I really think it's less expected. I mean, for my kid, I live with them. This is at some level self-serving if they're doing well. For an employer, sadly, but I think for a lot of caregivers, they may think, well, the employer could find a new employee without all my baggage, without all my caregiving stuff. And this is going to add to the pressure. But when they realize that their employer is going to be one piece of the solution and not one more challenge, it's massive for culture. So when that person, they're talking to our chaplain, they're saying, oh man, like it's so tough right now with caring for mom. I mean, I got my sister who's all over me about this. And then of course, you know, I have my own children. I have this. They're listing things that in their mind are on the side, so to speak, of challenge. They embrace that. But then they might list some of those things like, but oh wow, so what's been a blessing through this is my neighbor, or the neighbor of the caregiver. They've been such a godsend. And then my employer, how are they going to talk? What are they going to say? As a chaplain, am I listening, and am I hearing the employer's part of the stressors, or they're a part of the solution? If you walk along somebody and are part of the solution as an employer during times like that where they're caregiving, I mean, you've built a ton of loyalty. It's huge for culture. So
that's great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Justin, I want to go back to you. You mentioned earlier that workplaces often aren't equipped to handle loss or life transitions. What have you learned about how leadership style, especially humility and vulnerability, can create space for employees to bring their whole selves to work?
Yeah, vulnerability, humility, again, those are qualities that I think as a workforce we can beg for, and hope for, to get them, right? But when we have them, and I kind of make this joke, it's not even a joke, but I worked for a company here in Indianapolis for about 5.5 years that arguably has one of the most vulnerable, humble environments, leadership that ever existed on earth, right? I don't know if that's actually true. I don't know how we're going to measure that. The company was called Lessonly, if anybody is familiar. And that the space that we were allowed to be ourselves, and not just allowed, but the promotion and desire from leadership roles to actually do that, to bring ourselves as who we are, not have to put a veil on for work, I would argue was a massive part of our success. And I've worked for the exact opposite. much bigger company earlier in my career where I kind of felt like I had to wear that veil, and I had to show up in a way that probably wasn't exactly who I was. And there was some success, but not nearly to the effect. And I was much faster to exit when I had the opportunity versus really wanting to hang on. When it comes to hardship and people's lives, I mean, we really have, and Darren, you kind of made me think about this, but you really have three options as employers. We can look for all the people and hire all the people with nothing going on in their lives, right? Nothing. Good luck. And when somebody has something, we can fire them and go find somebody who has nothing going on. We can accept it that they are going to have things in their lives and just let them burn and self-opt out of the company, or we can do that same thing and provide resources and support and a way around the retention problems, the productivity problems that you might see by providing support. The first two are probably pretty hard from a business perspective, although those are the two that I would argue probably that I would say up until this point, up until the past probably 10, 15, 20 years, that's kind of how employers have operated, right? You're lucky as an employee to be here, right? And in a tough hiring climate like right now, you might feel that as well. But that hiring climate is going to change. The companies that double down on providing support for the people that they have, the people that they worked so hard and spent so much money to hire because they were the right people for the job. If you support those people, like was already mentioned, they will double down in the times that you need them to double down. They'll work harder. They'll become more loyal. They'll be much faster to provide leadership to the people that need leadership. They're probably going to be faster to volunteer for things that nobody else wants to volunteer for because they feel like they were taken care of and they want to return that favor. It's not a one-to-one, right? People have talked about like a two-way street. I don't subscribe to the two-way street mentality, especially an employee-employer relationship, but I do subscribe to, we're almost near Carmel, so I'll use the roundabout analogy. You put enough in, the good stuff is going to come out. It might not be a one-to-one, right? But you keep putting in as an employer, the good stuff is going to come out and it's going to pay off in the success of your company is my belief.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for running through all those alternatives and how the latter is probably the
roundabout.
Yeah, the roundabout way. Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a good segue for our next section on building cultures of care. So, Darren, I want to go back to you. Workplace Chaplains partners with about 50 companies, if I'm correct, in countless care organizations. What does it look like when compassion becomes part of a company's DNA and not just a response to a crisis? And how can leaders make care consistent practice?
Yes, yeah, correct. About 50 companies here in the state of Indiana and across a variety of sectors of business, but sometimes where our care is the most utilized is in those organizations that are doing work in the caregiving space. So healthcare, in the senior living space and others, but the need's even more amplified, which helps in thinking about this question and that DNA, that culture, again, talking about, I think one thing I would just remind us or encourage in thinking about that is it looks like the people in your organization, in your company with the skills, because I do think some of caregiving is learned, and the gifts is what I would call it. I think some of it as people, I mean, I've just met people with these high capacities for empathy, love. These skills are so essential and crucial and going to help companies reach their other goals, their goals for their bottom line for their company, the culture they want, et cetera. But I think in many cases, they're sadly underutilized. And so once you create that culture, when you do some specific things to build and sort of unleash these gifts and skills that the workers have, it's just going to take off and it's going to compound and help people reach their goals. So the idea being that the same gifts that these people have that are good for caregiving are going to be good for your company. These are going to be the people that are going to go the extra mile for what you want to do as an organization. And so, fan those flames. As far as specifically, I mean, I can speak to, because of what we do, our chaplains will provide some stories anonymously to us of the care going on. So I can give one story that I saw firsthand that would exemplify that kind of culture. So I was checking on an employee that was a maintenance person for a company we serve, and he's really one of these high empathy people. And he, as a part of his life personally, is caretaking for his wife. So in his role as a caregiver, he's doing that a lot at home and coming to work. And I would assess as a chaplain that he was in a really good place in managing that. Well, not too long ago, this employee gets diagnosed with cancer. So now he's in his own fight. And so I'm visiting him at a hospital. And of course, the thought is, what's going on with my spouse? So a couple of things that I heard that said to me, this is a company with the DNA of the culture. I heard him get off the phone with his wife, and I could hear his wife saying that she had just finished getting groceries. And she said, I didn't have to lift a thing, and so took care of all of that and the checkout procedures, etc. What was interesting related to our conversation is the so-and-so was one of his coworkers.
Oh, wow.
So this is somebody taking their time on their own to go with wife and help. Additionally, when I was talking to him and assessing where he was at, we asked some curious questions sometimes. And so I asked, well, how are things financially? And he said, well, we're doing the best we can. He said, well, I'm out of my paid time off. I'm having to use all those things. I had to sign off on all of that. So there was an understanding as he's gone through this crisis, he's got to use up all the things policy-wise.
Sure.
He accepted that. He said, but something else is happening. People are donating their time to me. So they had a mechanism at this organization where coworkers could donate their time off, I presume. I don't know if that meant their time actually paid time, but certainly their time off to this person. So, that causes me to think about, those type of proactive ways that we take those people with those gifts and the empathy and all those things and let them go to work, provide them a means, someone they can refer to, like a care partner, a chaplain, a grief specialist, or let them do things like give their time to that caregiver that needs that in a certain season.
Definitely. That's a really powerful example. Thanks for sharing that. Lee, I want to go back to you. If an employer came to you tomorrow and said, we want to support our employees who are caregivers, but we don't know where to start, what would you tell them is the first meaningful step?
So I know you asked me for the first one. I have a couple of ideas.
Okay, perfect.
Having an employer that recognizes the importance of caregiver support is essential. That recognition should be reflected in management policies like flexible scheduling and remote work if at all possible. These accommodations help caregivers manage their responsibilities more effectively and also foster a workplace rooted in empathy, but also productivity and retention. If somebody's able to do their job in a more flexible way to allow them to take care of their other responsibilities, they're more likely to stay somewhere. Like, yes, the work needs to get done, but does it always have to be 9 to 5? So I'm just going to use an example. At CICOA, I actually benefit from a core hours work schedule where I work 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then I just complete the rest of my work hours when it works in my schedule and when it works for the caregivers that I serve. So sometimes that can look a little different. Sometimes I may be working until 7 p.m. because I don't have anything going on that day. And sometimes I may need to be off right at 3 because I have an appointment to make it to. So It really just depends, but knowing that I have that flexibility allows me to be able to do the work that I need to do for my career, but also be there in the way that I need to be for my own family, for my own responsibilities. The flexibility helps me preserve my PTO. I know you mentioned that somebody had used all of their time off. I'm able to preserve more of that so I can use it for, myself, unwinding a little bit when I need to. If something conflicts with those hours between 10 to 3, I use PTO then. So it's not automatically taking every bit that I have. It allows me to stay focused and also present for both my work life and the people that I serve. Knowing that my schedule can adapt to my life makes me feel supported. That support helps prevent burnout in a time where I might feel like I am just pulled on every end. So, of course, flexible scheduling doesn't work for every employer. But I do think it's a vital consideration when trying to support caregivers in the workforce. I also hear from multiple caregivers, if I could just work from home 1 day a week, if I could just work from home when I can, that would make all the difference. And I think that that's actually a very impactful option when you're able to. Not every job is going to be able to allow you to do the work that you need to do from home. But I wouldn't be able to do my job as effectively as I do without the ability to work remotely. Eliminating commute time definitely reduces a lot of my stress and gives me more time and space to manage what I need to outside of my career responsibilities. So for caregivers, that extra time and reduced pressure can really make a world of difference. And again, just prevent that burnout of trying to manage so many different time constraints.
Yeah. Yeah, in a day and age when time is so scarce, those are really great illustrations of that. Justin, I want to close out this section of building cultures of care with you. At Bereave, you're building entirely new tools to help organizations respond to life's hardest moments. What lessons from your startup journey might help employers innovate and how they care for caregivers and grieving employees?
The lessons from my startup journey.
Yeah.
How much time we got? I think as it relates to caregivers, creating a culture of care, I think there are two things that I think are probably the most powerful pieces. A little bit higher level, probably a little bit less tactical to some degree, but one is have a plan. Have a plan that you've created with your employees who have been through these things. This should not be 4 or 5 people sitting in a room that don't know what they're talking about because they haven't been through something. They should bring people in, listen to the experiences, and build a plan, not necessarily a policy, but a plan for what happens when, can I say shit? Sorry, can I? So when shit hits the fan, when shit hits the fan in life, because it does, what are we going to do as an employer, right? And it's not managers get discretion, they can figure it out, right? It's figuring out what are the tactical steps that the executive team is going to take, the management team is going to take, the HR team is going to take, and put that in place. That's number one. And number two is communicating that plan to the employees and going to employees and saying, hey, when shit hits the fan in your lives, here is the plan. It takes out so much unnecessary stress to have the plan and to communicate the plan, right? There are a lot of things you can do in the plan, and not everybody's going to like every piece of the plan, and that's okay. But if you have the plan and you communicate the plan, that gives people the moment in their life when things go sideways, they know what their employer is going to do. They know what their manager is going to do, and that is going to at least bring some level of maybe even solace in those moments when their personal stress is through the roof and their emotion is through the roof. I don't know that I could necessarily help build that entire plan. There are components we can help build. That's not what we do as a company, but we have the luxury of thousands of people maybe tens of thousands at this point, having shared their stories of loss, of grief, of working through their employer. So we have taken all of these trends and some of the beautiful things employers have done and all of the awful things that have happened, which is kind of how we built our tools in general. But when you think about these things and think about the plan and you need help, there are other business leaders out there, me, anybody sitting up here that I'm sure would be happy to just give some insight on what they've done, what they've seen. You don't have to do it alone, but create the plan, communicate the plan, and I think you'll have a really, really, really good start and a really healthy, a good start to a healthy relationship with employees that need it the most when they need it the most.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I want to close out by looking ahead. I want to talk about the opportunities that lie ahead. So Leah, I want to start with you. You work with caregivers every day who are exhausted, but also resilient. What gives you hope about the future of work and care, and where do you see progress being made today?
I would say what gives me hope is definitely the growing momentum around conversations like the one we're having today. You don't always see this. And it really shows the need for strong partnerships between caregiver support services and employee assistance programs. They're being emphasized. The kind of dialogue is a powerful step forward, and there's just an increase in the recognition of number of working caregivers. It's always growing, but being able to have that awareness is essential. More attention is being paid to the caregiving experience itself, which is critical for shaping policies and workforce practices that truly support caregivers in a meaningful way. When employers and support organizations come together, we move closer to creating environments where caregivers don't have to choose between their careers and their responsibilities. We can thrive in both.
Definitely. Thank you for that. Justin, I want to go back to you. You've said your mission is to leave things better than you found them. What might a better workplace look like for caregivers in 5 years?
That's my personal mission, by the way,
Okay.
not Bree's mission.
Perfect.
Leave them better
I'll
than I
look it
found
up.
them. Yeah, I think the vision is an educated vision. It's an understanding vision. It's one that has a good there's a good understanding of what people go through in their lives, especially from folks that have not been through something. It is the building of a plan. It is the building of a support system, and it's a decision from executive leadership to say to decide how much they want to invest in supporting people that they've hired. And again, I come back to that a lot. Like, we spend a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort. Cost of turnover can be 50% to 200% of an employee's salary, just depending on their role. We spend all this time and money and effort bringing in the very best people that we can find to let them burn out. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So better education, better training, and better support mechanisms, I think, is a great 5-year outlook. Maybe even it might be 10, but I love thinking about it in the 5-year term.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that from your leadership perspective. Darren, I want to close out with you. You spend your days helping people find strength and meaning amid struggle. If you could leave employers with one takeaway about caring for caregivers, what would it be? Just one.
One. I know one. Listening, I'm adding more, but no, I would say the one, to go back a little bit to what I was saying before, is if you have somebody with the heart of a caregiver that is willing to provide care for a loved one time of need, that is a heart you can captivate and utilize for your company and your goals. You can take those same things, sacrifice, hard work. You can take the empathy and compassion, and you can put that to work, and it will shape the company culture in a positive way. It will take you to your goals. They are the kind of people that are going to bring your company along bring your company along and bring the people who are struggling to get along. They're those kind of people. So you want to find those people in your organization, and once identified, you want to support them, and then you want to help their gifts be utilized for your own good. So I think when people start looking at those people as a net positive for everything they're trying to do, it'll make a big difference, because I genuinely believe in working with and seeing those people in the workplaces. They absolutely are those people, the people want to have on their team.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just want to thank you all, Leah, Justin, Darren. Can we all give them a round of applause? Just the first one. Appreciate you all sharing your wisdom and hearts today. We've heard that caregiving isn't just a private issue, it's a workforce reality. We've heard that support can take many forms: a compassionate conversation, an understanding manager, and a culture that recognizes people as whole beings. Our hope is that everyone here leaves today seeing caregiving not as a burden to manage, but as an opportunity to build workplaces and communities where people truly thrive. So thank you again. If you don't mind giving them another round of applause, appreciate that.
I think the questions, the conversations that occurred is a great point about where we're at when it comes to caregiving in the workplace, right? We see solutions popping up, whether it's the paid holiday, whatever those solutions that were shared was, there is so much more opportunity. And I know each of the panelists that were up here today want to lean into that conversation with you. And so I guess I should probably do a brief introduction about myself and Amanda, who's here with me. My name's Jonathan Haig. I'm Vice President of Innovation here at CICOA. And what I get to care about is about encouraging creative confidence and imagination when it comes to our work, and it comes to the challenges and opportunities that face our industry. And so when we've been doing caregiver solutions for all 50 years of existence here at CICOA, but more dedicated, we have Amanda Venatti here, who's our Director of Caregiver and Dementia Support Programs. And for the last 13 years, we've been working directly with family caregivers. So Leah's role, when she's out there talking and coaching into family caregivers, all right? And so over the last year, we've had a very intentional conversation here at CICOA about how do we imagine a different future for family caregivers. You can see on the back wall, we have this designing and building the future of home and community-based care. That's our mindset. We want to continue to innovate. We want to create in this space. And that's why I'm so thankful to be surrounded by all the folks that are in this room that have participated in the discussion, but our panelists as well, who are creating a better future for family caregivers. So what I want to share just very briefly, and I'm going to actually advance to the next slide here. I don't know that I'm allowed to press things, but I'm pressing them. One of the new solutions that we developed here that you heard mentioned was CareAware Journey. CareAware Journey is an online platform that we are sharing with employers to help give resources to employee caregivers. These can be videos, these can be articles, these can be infographics created by folks like Leah and Amanda and their team. In addition to that, we're offering one-to-one coaching on the platform. And so we're positioning this as something that employers can offer to their employees, okay, to respond to everything that we had talked about here. But let me be very clear. This is just one solution that needs dozens, if not hundreds of solutions in the market, right? Obviously, I care about this one. That's why I have the QR code up there and wanting to talk about it. But this challenge, this opportunity is going to need our collective imagination. It's going to need the conversations that we've had in the Q&A about how do we continue to build creatively in this space to respond to that challenge and opportunity. So in the remaining time, I encourage you to, yes, absolutely scan the QR code, learn more about CareAware Journey. Cody in the back has a screen set up where you can navigate around CareAware Journey to learn more about the product. You can also book time with myself and others here, Cody, on your own time to learn more about the platform. And we really love, if it's something that works for you, we'd obviously love to talk about that. But if you can think about other employers in your life as well that you think this might be a good intervention, we'd love to have that conversation. So we're scheduled until 10:30. I would love for these remaining 15 minutes for you all to continue the conversations that you've had with the panelists, that you've had with each other, and we can go from there. I want to thank you all for being here, for spending the morning with us, and we look forward to talking again soon and inviting you to the next Envision lecture series. Thank you.